Hi, everyone. This is Pam Torrey from Ingage, and you're listening to the Ingaged podcast. We know tech is changing the way people market and sell now more than ever. And on this show, I sit down with sales and marketing thought leaders and experts to learn how you can create, share, and measure your way to success. Today, I'm chatting with Tim Musch, an expert in tech for the home improvement industry, and honestly, my personal go-to for industry insights. Tim has spent the last 30 years developing and refining technology solutions for contractors in the home improvement industry. Prior to that, he spent 15 years gaining experience in a family-owned remodeling company in central Wisconsin. Tim regularly speaks with industry groups to build the case for the benefits of systemizing local independent businesses. In 2022, Tim joined the elite group of industry veterans and was inducted into the Legends of the Home Improvement Industry. That was a really big moment. I remember that. Currently, Tim is a business development specialist for Paradigm LLC, which is transforming the way that residential construction business is done across the globe with solutions such as their digital selling and quoting tool, Paradigm Vendo, which you're such a great partner to us. Thanks for joining us today, Tim.
Oh, happy to be here, Pam. I've checked out a few of your podcasts, doing a great job with these, so I'm honored to be involved.
Well, thank you. We are thrilled to have you here. It's not every day that I get a certified legend of the home improvement industry on our podcast network. So it's great to have you here. We had Brad Yoho, who was part of making you a legend of the home improvement industry, but you're the official legend to be here.
You
So
know, there's a secret to making that, Pam. I'll share it right now. All you got to do is be old enough and still in the business.
you just got to stick around and eventually someone gets you a plaque.
That's right.
Well, Tim, you do not need much of an introduction. Everybody in this industry, I think, knows who you are. But can you give our listeners a snapshot of your background and then what brought you to Paradigm today? I think that
Yeah,
is what people are curious about.
yeah, good question. I'll make this short. The background was such, and you mentioned it in the intro. Was involved in a retail business. This would have been probably hmm, early to mid 80s into the early 90s. Retail business meaning window replacement. And having fun. It was a good business, still is today. But one day, and I'll shortcut this process, but one day I got a bug up me to go buy a computer. Never used one before, so I went down and bought a Macintosh computer, um, pretty much to help us create newspaper ads, yellow page ads, because that's what marketing was back then. And bought that computer, had a little programming language on it, so I fiddled with it a little bit. And lo and behold, after a few years, I ended up creating what I guess we now know as a CRM to help us in our business. And it turned into a business of its own. And I think maybe many people on the podcast here today know that I was involved with MarketChart for about 30 years. And then, gosh, about a year and a half ago, I decided to make the jump over to a fellow Wisconsin company, Paradigm, because I was so excited about the tool they had, Paradigm Vendo. And what that is an in-home presentation slash quoting contract generation tool. And I've had interest in that since day one, because actually before I created the CRM PAM, I went down to Radio Shack and bought a little handheld computer with a basic programming language on it. And I put our pricing in there. And I used that in the home to deliver pricing. I found out it really delivered pricing in a believable way. And consumers liked it. I liked it. And so I'm kind of returning back to those very roots of being in the computer business. So that's a little bit of the background.
Well, with your extensive background in developing technology solutions for home improvement contractors, could you talk us a little bit through the evolution of tech within this industry over the last 30 years? It's come a long way, especially in the last 10 years.
It sure has. And if we're going back 30 years, here's the way it worked for me. Um, the first wave was okay, you guys, you need a computer because they didn't have them back then. So we had to convince them to get a computer. I'll never forget the first 8 people we trained on what's now known as MarketChart. We had them in a room, delivered all the computers for them, had the software loaded on it, sat down, and the first question that came up is one guy raised up this mouse and he said, "What's this?" And we went, "Oh boy, this is going to be fun." So we spent the next hour and a half letting them play video poker to get used to a mouse. And then we went on and did the best we could on training them on using this tool. But that's where it started. And then technology evolved to things like, okay, let's do our accounting and bookkeeping on computers. So we had things like QuickBooks come up. Then, of course, the CRMs came on the scene. It evolved then to, okay, we all got to have a website. So everybody got involved in creating websites and figure out how to make those create business for them. And then in more recent years, presentation tools like you at Engage are so great at, quoting tools like us at Paradigm Vendo. And then most recently, it's evolved to data-centered AI tools. And that's kind of, in general, how the evolution has gone in our industry. So who knows what's next? It's going to be kind of interesting.
So there are a handful of buzzwords that we hear all the time when we're talking about sales software. We're talking about software that helps sales reps. And one of those is sales enablement. It's a key word that everybody talks about. And like really what it means is that it just helps sales reps to do their job. It enables them to do their job. So as it relates to technology as a sales enablement tool, can you talk a little bit more about why that's so important in this year of 2024? I know as we were talking about the topic for this podcast, and I know on our side we were like, we have Tim Musch, we get to talk to Tim Musch. What are we going to talk to Tim about? Like, we have all of this wealth of experience. What are we going to ask him about? The topic that came up was was a title as a question. Are you making 2010 presentations to 2024 prospects? So can you tell us more about who is that prospect? What are they looking for? And like, why does all of this technology matter to that person? Like, a roof hasn't changed that much. Why does the presentation matter so much to them?
Well, that's a good question. And I think that question, are you making 2010 presentations to 2024 prospects, is really something we all should be considering. So I decided to really go to the expert and find out really what home improvement shoppers are looking for nowadays. And the expert I went to is Chat GPT. And here's what I learned.
It seems to know everything. It's kind of
That's
annoying.
right. So I decided to ask them. So I asked Chat GPT the question, what do consumers expect from home improvement companies in 2024? Here's a couple answers. One came back and said, first off, a digital experience. It went on to say consumers may expect home improvement companies to use digital tools that help them visualize and plan their projects. This involves experiences that allow consumers to actively participate in evaluating and making product and vendor selections. So that's one thing. It went on to say they're also looking for personalized solutions. Personalization is a key trend in various industries, and home improvement is no exception. Consumers may expect companies to offer personalized recommendations based on their preferences, budget, and specific requirements of their home improvement projects. So I think it's right on. I think Chat GPT really nailed that in terms of what consumers are looking for. I found one more thing of interest, and this is not necessarily coming from artificial intelligence, it's coming from real world. And what it was a JD Power customer satisfaction study done last year. And it's a study based on responses of about 3,000 purchasers of home improvement products. And I'll paraphrase this to save us some time. But what the conclusion was is manufacturers and retailers that personalize the experience will see higher overall satisfaction scores. And then it concluded by saying customers will be willing to invest more when they have this type of experience. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Presentations done in 2010, maybe Pam, we're done with 6-inch pitch books with a bunch of unorganized sheets and papers and all that kind of stuff. Not so sure that's what consumers are expecting nowadays. So, little different world.
So I think that a common thing I hear is that while the technology may have changed, the prospect hasn't changed. Consumers are fundamentally the same type of person. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. Is a consumer from 2010, a home improvement customer from 2010, similar to a customer from 2024? Are there big differences between those two buyers?
Well, in many respects, that's very true. And I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go back a few decades and
Take
dig
us
into
there.
some. All right, dig into some sales training I got way back from a gentleman by the name of Zig Ziglar. Many people might know who I'm referring to there. And in this respect, this is what hasn't changed. And I think this is absolute wisdom. What Zig said way back then is there's basically five obstacles to the sale. And here's what they are. You might want to write these down. No need, no desire, no money, no hurry, no trust. So that's what hasn't changed. However, you construct your presentation, whether it be in that pitch book or whether it be using technology, which it should be in 2024, you darn well better hit all those obstacles because if you miss one, you're not going to get a sale. So, for example, no need. The question is, are you doing the proper needs assessment to really find out and establish that need with that prospect? And you might think, well, gosh, I'm in their home. They must think they have a need, right? Not all the time. Many times we generate leads in a very nebulous way. And oftentimes, no, they just couldn't say no to an appointment. So the need maybe is not established in their mind. So doing a proper needs assessment in your presentation is so important to set the stage for that presentation. Now, just because there's a need doesn't necessarily mean there's a desire to satisfy that need. So that's where your presentation comes in again, is take the information you learned from no need and turn it into desire. And that's where your product demo comes in. Using Engage, if you're using that product, can really help in this part of it to create that desire, videos and things such as that, to create a desire to satisfy the need that's been established. And then going on, no money, especially in today's economic climate, if you're not totally leveraging financing, you're really, really missing out.
100%. Financing,
Yeah,
financing, financing.
no question. I think one of our biggest jobs right now in this environment is we have to help our prospects buy. They want to buy, but oftentimes they don't really know how they're going to pay for these things. And too often, companies don't necessarily leverage financing as much as they could or should and really miss out on a lot of business there. And then the second two, no hurry, create some urgency in your presentation. Because frankly, if you're selling windows, a bathroom, whatever the case may be, they're getting along with it. It's not broke. If they have a leaky roof, that's a different story. But oftentimes, no hurry is not necessarily something you can count on. So your presentation should handle that. And then the final one, no trust. I think we all know that people buy things from people they know, like, and trust. So build trust and weave it throughout your whole presentation with all sorts of things that give credibility to your company in a manner that your competitors can't do. So, in other words, excuse me, today's prospect is looking for, yes, a 2024 experience, probably digital, but they're also looking for a sales presentation that's going to make sure that it handles the objections that they might not even know are in their mind, but they are. Let me just conclude this part of it, Pam, by mentioning a couple stats. 75% of consumers expect companies to use new technologies to create better experiences. And then another survey, the State of the Connected Customer Survey, discovered 62% of consumers say their experiences with one industry influence their expectation of others. So when they're online in Amazon or they've had a stockbroker presenting to him from an iPad and doing it in a very sophisticated way, that's what they're expecting from us. So in some respects, nothing's changed, but in other respects, people's expectations of how we deliver that presentation, a little different in 2024.
That last statistic is fascinating to me because I just had a light bulb moment. I bought my last car completely online. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't have to deal with anybody. I bought a car online and it showed up 3 days later in front of my condo. And I have realized that that's impacted the way I buy everything else now. Like if I can buy a car online and I don't have to talk to anybody, why can't I do everything online? Or why isn't there a digital format to do pretty much everything else? I didn't realize that that's an actual trend that's happening across industries now, that those experiences are impacting the way people buy windows or the way that they handle their bathroom remodel. It's fascinating.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, before you talked about creating personalized experiences and the fact that consumers want personalization during their sales process, and this is something I talk about all the time because one of the biggest hindrances to a personalized experience is kind of the step sales process because sales reps feel like they have to go through every single step kind of by rote during the sales process. And one of the things that Engage does really well is we help people to create more personalized experiences using that consistent content. And I'm wondering if you could take this further and talk to us about how elite companies are adapting to that customer expectation for personalization today and providing that kind of experience across the board, not just, in that company story presentation. How are they doing this with customers?
Well, you guys are at the forefront of this, but you guys, I mean, Engage. You guys have done a great job making a tool available to these contractors and a tool that's absolutely usable and doesn't take a whole bunch of time configuring and so forth to help do that. So technology is really the key here to making all this happen. And the companies that are doing this are really starting to rely on tools like Engage. At Vendo, we have something called a guided shopping experience, which goes well beyond just having a corner cut of a window and saying, hey, you need this because this glass is this way. It involves the customer in a way where they're actually building their window as they go based on what we've learned from them. And they see it come to life in the application and it turns into a fun project for them. So those are some things, other things and other companies that are really helping out in this space, not so much on the presentation side, but on the side of learning what works, what doesn't, is our friends at Rillo Voice, for those of you that don't know those folks. They have great technology that's going to allow you to really analyze what's going on with your salespeople, what's working, what's not working, and continue to craft your presentation to be as effective as it possibly can be.
That idea of the guided shopping experience gave me a flash of like the choose your own adventure books that I think most like Gen X and millennials grew up with, where we want to be part of telling the
Right.
story. We want to be part of choosing that next step, building that solution, creating that customized experience. We want to be involved. And I think that's just a really fascinating way to get the customer excited about what they're purchasing and help them to feel like they're part of that process for that investment in their home. Very
Yes.
cool. So, Tim, better than anyone, I think you know that tech can get a bad rap in this industry. I mean, this industry has a lot of challenges when facing the consumer, and we also have kind of the conflict between people who come at business ownership from the production side of things, who maybe aren't super tech savvy. They're roofers. That's what they do. They're experts at what they do. Maybe they're not experts at the technology side of things. What are some of the common misconceptions or challenges that contractors face when it comes to adopting technology? And how do you go about addressing them when you're giving these talks, when you're at these round tables, at these events? What are you hearing? How do you address it?
Yeah, that's a very good question because what I've seen over the years is you'll be speaking to a contractor, home improvement company, and they look at a given solution, they go, "Wow, that looks great. I love that. Uh, can I get it?" So they sign up for it, and then they're not really committed to it. And sometimes a bad rap, that's where it comes from. If you're going to get into this technology deal, you need to commit to it. You need to say, okay, we're going to do this. Now, what that means in some cases is you might have a bunch of employees in your business that have been there for decades, like me, and they might go, what in the world do I need to use an iPad for? I've used this same pitch book for 20 years. It's working good. You really need to make the call on that. You got to say to some of these employees, you got to come along with us. Because if companies do not kind of level up to these technologies going to get run over. Something that's happened in the past few years that for years and years and years didn't happen in this industry. Our industry was totally fragmented with a bunch of all little companies just doing their own thing everywhere. Now you're getting major players out there that have the wherewithal, have the resources to leverage this technology. And if you're not able to stack up against them, you're going to have some trouble. And
Mhm.
some of you might say, yeah, but their prices are twice as much as mine. You know, don't let that fool you. That may be the case in some of these larger companies' situations. But I'll tell you what, here's a little exercise to go through in your mind. Think about the company in your area that's probably selling the most stuff of what you sell, windows, doors, baths, and whatever. By most, I mean in terms of sheer units. And then find out what they charge for their product. And you're probably going to find the companies that are selling the most in your market are also the highest priced.
Mm,
So don't let that fool you. You want to
yeah.
make sure you put yourself in a position to compete with these folks as time goes on. So, to answer your question, Pam, you got to commit to technology. You just do nowadays. If not, with AI in the forefront and who knows where that's all going, you're in a danger of being left behind. So important to do.
Yeah, I've been on a few roundtables recently where I've been talking to some of these folks who are independent, who are now going up against PE roll-ups that have entered their markets. And they're straight up telling me that the way they're differentiating is through having a really compelling way of telling their company story. That's how they're differentiating because they're local. Like, we live
Yep,
here, we've been here, we're going to be here. This is our
you're right.
community. And that's how they're doing it. And I love that you're talking about, really committing to it. It's having that champion internally, whether it's the owner, sales leader, marketing leader, somebody's got to be committed to doing it so that way it gets done right. I mean, it's the same thing as production on a job. If you don't have someone who's in charge and who's fully committed to putting that roof on correctly, there's going to be problems.
Yep.
You don't want to be that person.
No, and you just got to make sure that, staff wise, that you're hiring some people who are capable to help you with this technology stuff. Because you
Mhm.
mentioned, Pam, lots of times the business owners have come from the production side of the business. Maybe technology isn't their strong suit. You can always hire people that can take care of this for you. So don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. So, Tim, you've mentioned a couple of companies that have sort of burst onto the scene, like Rilla Voice and some other partners. In your opinion, what are some emerging technologies that contractors really need to pay attention to right now in order to stay competitive and improve their profitability?
Yeah. Well, certainly, and this hasn't changed. If you aren't properly leveraging a CRM, that's really the core of your business to do that. So get yourself settled in with a great CRM that's built for this industry. And then check out the things like Rolla Voice. Um, keep your ear open to really what's going on with AI, because what's going on there is kind of incredible in terms of it's helping companies really identify the highest converting prospects to spend time with and things such as that. So make sure you're doing that as well. Um, One thing I know many companies have adopted to over the past few years, if not, make sure you're doing it. Make sure you're communicating with your prospects and your customers the way they want to be communicated to. And in many cases, that's texting. So
Hmm.
get yourself hooked up with texting in a proper manner to make sure that that communication takes place. So we could go on and on with that, but I just keep your eye and ear open to AI and what's going on in that world, and see how you can use it for your benefit.
So, before we wrap up, Tim, can you tell listeners a little bit about Paradigm Vendo and how they can learn more if they're interested?
Absolutely. And what Paradigm Vendo is, sometimes people get confused with Paradigm Vendo and Engage. They say, huh,
They
those
do.
are the same thing.
No, we're great
No, they're not the
partners.
same thing at all. In fact, what they do is they work tremendously together because we have something called dynamic data exchange that can kind of push data back and forth between the two. And you can take all the pricing elements that Paradigm Vendo does for you and present it in a proper manner and engage. So Paradigm Vendo is just a great complement to Engage. Certainly don't have to be used together, but I think that's the optimum way to use those tools. But really, what it's going to be able to do is let you present price in a proper manner and deliver contracts in a proper manner and things such as that. So I would suggest people just get a demo of it, check out what it's all about, see how it can work for your business. One thing I learned way back when I talked about that little sharp handheld computer I had, I found that when I presented a price that came off a computer, the homeowner believed it. Or if it comes out of a salesperson's mouth, yeah, not so much. So I think there's great benefit to having a technology tool do your pricing for you, save you time, save your salespeople mistakes and things such as that. So you can check it out at www.paradigmvendo.com. Place there you can watch a video and also sign up for a demo. So just check it out that way.
Yeah, and I do recommend if you're going to be at any of the upcoming conferences that Paradigm Vendo will be attending, Jason gives a great demo at the table. I've seen it live. It's lovely. He does a great job with it. So highly recommend if you're going to be at an event, just get an in-person demo of the product. It's very cool. So Tim, I have a question that I force everybody who comes on this podcast to answer. What is one trend that every business owner or sales manager should be focused on this year in 2024? What's that one thing that you think they need to be paying attention to?
Well, what I'm hearing out there, Pam, is people are finally waking up to the importance of total lead conversion efficiency.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is not just focusing on generating more leads, not just focusing on closing ratios, but I'm talking about the full funnel marketing process. Of course, from generated inquiries, but then getting them to appointments, and then getting appointments to issued leads, and then issued leads to demoed leads, and then demoed leads to sold leads, and then not sold leads to rehashed leads and things such as that. I'm finding that companies are finally waking up to the fact that you can't have a weak link in that chain or your profits are going to suffer.
mm,
It's been interesting to watch this over the past couple of years. Certainly, COVID came around a few years ago. We all thought, oh my gosh, our businesses are all going to die. Well, the reverse happened. Unprecedented demand, couldn't keep up, things such as that. And it's been interesting to watch something over those years. Right before COVID, we were lucky at Market Sharp back then when I was with Market Sharp to have access to a ton of data where we could analyze all these metrics I just mentioned, conversion rates along the whole funnel. And what I found out is a metric that frankly many people don't track is one that would be the difference between raw inquiries and installed jobs. Now,
mm,
there's a bunch of metrics in between, but that metric tells your whole story of how good you're doing in your whole marketing process. And before COVID, that conversion rate across billions of dollars worth of home improvements, so it's very reliable data, was 15.4%. Nowadays, after COVID, believe it or not, it went down to 11.8%. And you might
wow.
say, why is that? Demand went through the roof. Shouldn't be higher? Well, it should have been. But what happened over the years is because leads were so plentiful, people got complacent, shortcut things, not necessarily pay attention to it, and conversion suffered. And bottom line is profits suffered.
Mm,
So really pay attention to your full marketing funnel. Do everything you can with converting inquiries to appointments, appointments to issued leads, issued to demo leads, and of course, anything you can do to make your presentations better to increase closing ratios from demo leads. So Pam, that's what I see out there. People are focusing on, and part of that is that financing piece. Make sure you're doing that. So important. And let me just make one more comment before we wrap. You mentioned a couple events coming up.
mhm,
Here's what I've learned over the years. I've learned the people that go to these events time in and time out are the most successful companies in the industry. I see them there and I go, why is that person here? They're doing $85 million a year at a 20% profit margin. Do they really need to be here? They got this figured out. Not so much. That's why they're doing so well because they'll go to these events. Now, oftentimes I'll say to some companies, can you get to this event? they'll say, no, really can't make it. And I'll say, why not? Just can't get away from the business. Ugh, that's not good. You have to invest in your education. So a bunch of great events coming up. Don't necessarily need to name them here. I think many people know what they are, but make it a commitment to get some of these events, and it'll really help your business.
Most definitely. And, check with your technology providers to see if they have free or discounted tickets for you. We always have discounted tickets to everything that we go to. I know Vendo has discounted tickets for everything that you all go to. It's a great way to keep continuing that education. Yeah, we'd never accept not continuing to learn about the new products that we're selling, but how you sell and how you run your business is just as important. So I think it's a great call out, Tim.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. It was a pleasure to have you on our podcast. I look forward to having you back soon, either on the podcast or on a webinar.
Appreciate it, Pam. Enjoyed the time together and look forward to the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Ingaged podcast. Be sure to visit ingage.io for more information on how to create, share, and measure your way to success. If you love the Ingaged podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.